Let's continue on with the energy debate. I just got a text from a mate who summed this up so brilliantly, so succinctly. He said nuclear power is so uneconomic that you have to ban it, legislate against it. Renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy, so you have to keep subsidising it. I mean, it is absurd, isn't it? And the Clean Green New South Wales Treasurer and Energy Minister, Matt Kean, has been at the head of the pack of the hypocrisy lately, demonising coal. I showed you this clip last week from 2020 it was, when he was in conversation with former New South Wales Premier Bob Carr, boasting about how he was going to usher coal out of the system.
What we want to see is, as our existing coal-fired power stations come to the end of their lives, and let's face it, these are old bits of equipment. It's got nothing to do with climate change. It's just that they need to be upgraded. The cheapest way to upgrade our existing forms of generation is with a mix of wind, solar, storage, like pumped hydro, for example, and also batteries.
Yeah, it's all cheap and easy, isn't it? That's why it just happens without subsidies, not. But Kean's tune quickly changed when the country's largest state was facing the threat of blackouts.
However, what we can do is get our coal-fired power stations back online so that they're providing the bulk of the electricity at this time. We want renewables and coal at the moment providing electricity, not gas. Otherwise, that will continue to drive prices up right across the nation.
He loved coal then, didn't he? And today, while he was handing down his first budget, Kean was celebrating the record $4 billion in revenue from dirty mining royalties, up nearly $400 million on last year.
Coal exports are booming at the moment. Commodity prices are delivering record revenues for New South Wales. $4 billion because uplift in revenues because of coal exports. This is a good thing for the economy, and what we're doing with those revenues is investing in things that will set us up for long-term sustainable growth in the future.
Oh yeah, so coal's good when it's stopping blackouts at home, and it's also good when it's being burnt overseas and propping up your budget bottom line. Let's bring in Stephen Galilee from the New South Wales Minerals Council. He's the Chief Executive there. Good to talk to you again, Stephen. Obviously, coal is booming. Prices are high. And $4 billion in royalties, that's a big chunk of the New South Wales budget.
It's the highest it's ever been, Chris, and $11 billion over the next 4 years. And I'll give the Treasurer of New South Wales his due credit. He's been very pragmatic on the energy situation in New South Wales over the past few weeks. He's also kept his commitment, the coalition government's commitment in New South Wales, not to increase royalty rates in this term of government. And they've delivered record royalties for the people of New South Wales without doing that, unlike what has happened in Queensland today, with a devastating, potentially investment-wrecking, job-destroying royalty grab up in that state. So I'd give the Treasurer of New South Wales some credit for the actions that he's taken over the past few weeks in relation to our sector.
We'll come back to what he's done in the last few weeks, but you mentioned Queensland. Yes, the budget was delivered up there as well. Again, coal factored prominently. And yes, there's a royalty increase delivered by the Treasurer, Cameron Dick, on the coal industry. Here he is.
For a decade, multinational coal companies have benefited from royalty arrangements that have been frozen by successive Queensland governments. Few industries in the world have enjoyed such a long period without change. But from the 1st of July, the 10-year freeze comes to an end.
It's a pretty easy hit, isn't it? The industry's going well. Coal is being demonised as well. Whack an extra tax on it. Will it do any damage, or can the industry there and elsewhere around the country sustain it?
I'm sure my Queensland colleagues will have more to say on it, Chris, but it is going to cause a lot of concern in those Queensland mining communities to the north and in the central parts of Queensland onshore. And yeah, it looks like an easy hit politically, but the reality is, like in New South Wales, that industry in Queensland does a lot of the economic heavy lifting, provides significant investment in jobs. And there's a reason for that, because it's a competitive industry and it's got competitive policy conditions in place compared to other jurisdictions. If you start imposing additional big new taxes, you put all that at risk. And surely the Treasurer of Queensland understands that. It looks like a blatant revenue grab mixed up in politics, and it is going to put investment and jobs at risk. New South Wales is right now the best investment destination for mining in the country. And it's not just our coal industry, it's our gold and copper industry and our metals and minerals as well. That's been demonstrated by the budget today delivered by Treasurer Kean, and I think he did a pretty good job.
Now, you talk about the way Matt Kean has managed the energy crisis. Didn't that just force him to confront the reality that he needs coal-fired generation in this state? When there was a gap, when we were looking at blackouts, he got regulations in place declaring the coal supply as an essential service. It just underpins the reality that he cannot maintain a national electricity grid and sustainable supplies without coal being either in the system or on standby to supply coal when and as it's needed, electricity when and as it's needed.
That's right. That's right, Chris. Events are the best evidence in relation to these issues, and reality is a hard political taskmaster. And I hope that it has sent a very clear message to the owners of those generators that bringing forward those closure dates ahead of their scheduled closure, particularly in relation to the Eraring plant, scheduled for closure in 2032 and mooted to potentially be brought forward to 2025, that just simply can't be allowed to happen unless we have what is ready to replace it, ready to go. And at the moment, who can argue that that is the case? It's simply not the case. And to push ahead with those closures in the absence of any adequate replacement is going to put the economy at risk, and it will put public support for the whole energy transition at risk too. It's pretty obvious. Thanks for joining us, Stephen. Appreciate it. Thanks, Chris. Stephen Galilee, they're the Chief Executive of the New South Wales Minerals Council. It's as simple as that. If you want to replace coal-fired energy, you want to have that replacement in place before you kill off the coal. And as for the coal export industry, $4 billion into New South Wales state coffers, you don't want to give that away too easily either. Lots of schools, hospitals and other services come on the back of that.